Governor Kathy Hochul decides to keep Mayor Adams in office. However, she is weakening his power and providing oversight as he remains in office pending this upcoming election here in New York City. Welcome to Nuance. I'm Mike Scala, joined as always by Jay Carter, also known as Timid, the hip hop artist and chair of BLM Tokyo. What are your thoughts on this Hochul Adams situation, Jay?
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. And while we discuss it, we also want to make sure we get comments from you guys to keep the conversation going. I think it's an interesting, yeah, it's an interesting development. Like I was surprised last week that she had the power to remove him from office. So that, you know, deciding not to, I think last time we thought like we didn't really like the idea that she was going to remove him from office and maybe let the voters decide. So in that regard, it's kind of a good thing. But the she's putting those safeguards or guardrails, as some people are saying, in place. So that's interesting.
Right. Now, I know you said you were surprised that she had the power to do so. We should emphasize that in New York City, the mayor can't be impeached, right? Like you think about the president being impeached by the Congress and tried by the Senate. You don't have that kind of mechanism in New York for the mayor. And
Mm.
so instead of that, you have this, right? Essentially, the governor has the discretion to remove the mayor. And that in itself may be a bit controversial. I know it never happened before in history, so the governor certainly didn't take that responsibility lightly. She did hold meetings, as we discussed last week, right, last Tuesday, with a number of New York City leaders to get their input on it. And one thing that we didn't get to cover last week is a letter went out shortly afterwards where a number of New York City officials asked the governor rather, not to remove the mayor and
Mm.
to essentially let the voters decide. I know Senator James Sanders is one of those elected officials. We had Assemblywoman Rodnice Bichot, who's also the chair of the Brooklyn Democratic Party. So putting a lot of weight behind that. You had Assemblymember Clyde Vannell. It was a number of Black elected officials, notably in New York City, saying that this shouldn't be done for a number of reasons. I think the optics of it was one of those, right? Here would be a white woman governor removing a Black mayor. And first time in history that would ever be done, right? Any governor would remove a mayor of New York City. So I think they were saying, don't do that, leave it to the voters.
Yeah, I guess those optics could play a role. Personally, if that were to happen, if she did remove him, I wouldn't look at it as like, white woman governor removing a black mayor, because I'm looking at the concern that there's that quid pro quo situation with the Trump administration and even some of the allegations, the investigation that's going on against him for corruption. I'd be looking at it from
Mm-hmm.
that aspect. However, yeah, some people could look at it that way and see that, like, especially in this time when so many DEI policies are being pulled back and people are using basically DEI for meaning black, and just be like the optics could, yeah, could be a negative in some regards.
Right. Now, we should mention that the chair of the Brooklyn Democratic Party, Ms. Bichot, is an ally politically of Mayor Adams. And
Mm.
that may have had something to do with this, right? In this letter to Governor Hochul, they said, as Black legislators, we have seen this over and over again, double standards and an unfair process when it comes to our leaders. And so I think in that is also this idea that everyone is entitled to due process and a presumption of
Sure.
innocence proven guilty, right? And so we talked about it last time. The legal avenues seem to have failed, right? The indictment seemed to
Right.
not be going anywhere because of the president instructing the DOJ to drop the charges. So
Mm.
where does that leave us? To go immediately from that to, well, let's get the governor to take him out, rub some people the wrong way.
Sure, sure. Um, but it's it's pretty serious situation at this point. It's like, you know, do you keep doing it at the normal way, even if it's not working, or do you make an adjustment? But I guess as it stands now, she's not pulling him. But The
Right.
guardrails. What are these things that
The
she's
guardrails.
putting?
So we'll talk about that. I just wanted to finish off this topic of the letter that went out really quickly because
Okay.
you also had Senator Roxanne Prasad, Leroy Comrie, Nikki Lucas, the Assembly member, Alicia Hyman, and Al Taylor. Again, all Black elected officials from New York
Mm.
City. Now, one thing they also said in this letter is if a move is made against a mayor without a justifiable legal reason, our communities will not forget it. So I think that's important to emphasize without a justifiable legal reason, right? We know, as you alluded to, there's concern, there's a fear of a quid pro quo of something hanging over the mayor's head from the administration federally. But do we have anything concrete that we can hang our hat on here? Or is it just our speculation or what we have kind of intuitively come to believe?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's been speculation for months as far as again, speculation for months that Adams was cozying up to the incoming administration and now established administration to try to um, drop the investigation into him. And it, again, it's allegations at this point, but I think it's still kind of worrying
I agree
in
it's
that
worrying,
regard.
but does it rise to the level of the governor has to remove a mayor from office for the first time in the history of New York, right?
Right,
I said last week that she shouldn't, absent a clear legal rationale, which is essentially
right.
what the letter says as well, right? So we'll get to these guardrails now. I do want to give a quick shout out to Rodney's though, because sidebar here, back before she became chair of the Brooklyn Democratic Party, she was an incoming assembly member. And when I was working as legislative director and counsel in Albany in the Senate, she would often come up and visit our office. We would work together with her because when you would introduce legislation on the Senate side, you need the same bill in the Assembly in order for it to become law, right? It's got to pass both houses. And so if you're sponsoring a bill, you want to identify a sponsor in the other house who can carry that same bill. And so she would often carry our bills. We did the New York Promise program with her for free community college, which ended up kind of morphing into the Excelsior Scholarship Program in New York. Well, she also will come out as a new assembly member trying to learn the ropes in Albany. She would often come out with us to these cocktail parties and events at night. So we got to hang out with her a bit on the personal side. And she was cool to hang out with. And she would go on years later to become the chair of the Brooklyn Democrats. So you know how in Queens, Congressman Meeks is the chair of the party, right? She is now the chair in Brooklyn. It just so happened that she enrolled part-time in Brooklyn Law School, where I attended years ago, right? So I had a
Mhm.
friend who was attending the law school and told her about this story, how I used to hang out with her in Albany. I was like, but I don't even know if she'll remember that now because she was just coming into office and now she's a chair of the party in Brooklyn. Maybe she forgot already, whatever. So my friend actually emailed her saying, hey, welcome to the law school. My friend Mike Scala said that you guys used to hang out or whatever when you first came to Albany, like you would go to cocktail parties and events together sometimes, with the group of people. And she apparently responded, yeah, like Mike and I used to hang out back in the day. So that was cool that she didn't forget me.
Yeah. So what's up?
So,
So you changed, trying to say you're an unforgettable guy.
hey, at least the chair of the Brooklyn Democratic Party has not forgotten me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right, getting to the guardrails now.
Yeah. So
Kind of
what
struck me
were
as a bit of a
the
cop out. So,
oh, okay. Well, first, before we get into why you think it's a cop out, what are the guardrails that she's put into place?
okay, so a few things here. One of them is who has the ability to sue the federal government on behalf of New York City, right? Normally, that is a power reserved for the mayor's office, right? It's one of the responsibilities of the mayor. And again, a theme on this show is elections matter. A lot of people don't know the nuances of some of these issues, right? Like you're voting for a candidate for an office based on what personality or whatever you like the person, but sometimes you don't really think about, well, what are you electing them to do? When you elect a
Mhm.
mayor of New York City, one of the things you're electing them to do is sue the federal government on behalf of the city if necessary, right? If the federal government is overstepping its bounds, is violating the
Mhm.
rights of New York City, it's the mayor's job, the mayor's office, that's supposed to step in and follow those claims. Well, That's why you need a mayor in place who you believe is adequately prepared and equipped to do that on behalf of the city, to stand up to the federal government as needed, right? We talked about now there is a worry, I think a legitimate worry that the New York City mayor may be beholden to the president. Does that impede on the ability or the willingness of the mayor to file these lawsuits against the president, against the federal government, if needed, right? If New York City's rights are being trampled. I think that's a
Right.
legitimate concern. Well, the governor, in response to that, is going to expand the authority of other officials, right? So, in effect, you could say she's reducing the mayor's power because the mayor used to have sole power to do this, essentially. Now it's going to be other officials as well. So, she identified the speaker of the city council, it's currently Adrian Adams, the controller of New York City. Now, it's important to differentiate here. This is the city controller as opposed to the state controller, because we're going to get to the state controller in a minute here, right? But when it comes to this guardrail, so to speak, the city controller is given the ability to sue as well as the public advocate. And so currently that would be Brad Lander and Jumaane Williams, respectively.
Mhm. Okay. I mean, if we're concerned, and there's a legitimate concern that the mayor may not be impartial in that regard, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Um, I can see that argument that it makes sense. My thought on this is, and this is why I said it sounded like a cop out. If you're saying the mayor does not need to be removed from office, you're going to keep the
Mm,
mayor in office, then why are you saying, but we're going to weaken the mayor's power? Because a big role of the mayor is to sue the federal government when needed. And you're saying now we've lost faith in the mayor's ability to carry out his duties, right? A very crucial responsibility of the job. But we're going to keep him in
mm.
office, but we're going to give these other people the ability to do part of the mayor's job. So to me, that's like, you don't really trust the mayor, but you maybe are afraid of the political consequences of removing him. So you're trying to find this middle ground. But I mean, if you're going to severely weaken the mayor's power, then why is he in office? So that's, to me, you're saying he's not able to do his job as mayor.
Right, I can see that. I think there's also kind of a middle ground there. Not so far. I mean, of course, you can say she's not trusting the mayor, and probably there's a legit reason for that. But he also hasn't been convicted of anything, and this still speculation as far as if he's like hanging off. He's a loyalist now to adversarial administration. So it's like if she were to remove him, she wouldn't necessarily have the concrete justification to do so. It's all speculation. This seems to be like a middle ground here. Like something's not right. You're under investigation.
Right.
You're a little bit close to here, and it's not cool either. So let's put a few protections in place while the justice system plays out in whatever your case is, while we see what kind of actions you're going to take, and then, it's the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how she is trying to justify it, but
You're not buying it.
not really, because that's the mayor's job. And I think a lot of people may not think of that as the mayor's job, right? They may think, oh, it's the mayor. He's the guy who goes on TV when there's a snowstorm or whatever, right? He's magically in charge of the crime of the city. People have different ideas as to what the mayor does. A big
Right.
job of the mayor is this: standing up to the administration in court, filing lawsuits on behalf of the city. And if you're saying you don't think the mayor can be trusted with doing that anymore, well, then why are you keeping the mayor in office? So, to me, that's why it strikes me as a cop out. I don't think I
Mm.
would have taken that route. For me, it's either he can do the job or he can't. I'm going to remove him or I'm going to keep him in office. There's no middle. The middle ground is a political tactic to me, right?
I
Because
don't know. So let me ask you, if you kept him in office. So I'm assuming your choice, if you were governor, you wouldn't do anything at this point, and you would just let it play out.
I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't shrink the responsibilities of the mayor's office. I may do some of the other stuff, which is oversight, right?
Okay.
Maybe more investigation. She's talking, we'll get to the other guardrails, but
Okay.
maybe taking a closer look at what's going on in the mayor's office. That seems more appropriate to me. But when it
But
comes to saying we're going to allow three other city officials to do what was the mayor's job, that's not indicating you have faith the mayor can do his own job.
but right. Um, but what if it's found out that, we see in the coming weeks, coming months that he is in fact proving the suspicions correct and you did nothing? I think there'd be
The onus isn't on you to act out of speculation. This is a very drastic
true.
talking here, right? So you can only act on what's known. And if you don't have that information, and she, by the way, at the press conference, she didn't identify concrete proof that he,
Right.
right, has got a quid pro quo, some kind of arrangement. It wasn't any of that. This is all really speculation as far as we can tell. So it isn't the job of the governor to act on speculation. Going back to the letter, right? And I know some people thought that letter shouldn't have been sent. There's some controversy over that, but there are valid points in there,
Right.
namely, absent legal proof. What are you doing, right? Why
Well,
the mayor? And to me, again, this is I guess to charitably describe it, it is a middle ground. It's saying we're not going to remove the mayor from office, but we're going to weaken his power.
okay. Let me bring it to that Fox News appearance that Adams did with his Homan, they call him the border czar for the Trump administration when he was on there, and some speculate that the statement that Homan made was a blatant threat for the mayor to get in line or there'd be consequences. But there was another thing before that that Homan said with the mayor, and he was saying that dealing with the sanctuary law, there's something that Adams can't do. He can't override, but they were together working on some things to work around some of these things because the city council would oppose these things. And so they want to basically go around the city council in regard to this immigration enforcement and the sanctuary law. And so Adams was on board with that. So it's like he's working with the administration to circumvent the city council's ability to vote or push back.
Well,
Does that not give some kind of indication of the mayor being compromised?
I don't think so. Not unless the mayor indicated he was doing so just because he was asked to by the president. And if he didn't, the indictment would be back or something like that, right? But he's been pretty consistent on his policy. You could disagree with his approach to
Hmm.
immigration policy and everything. But since he's been mayor, I think he's been catching heat the whole time from progressives, especially for being,
Sure.
too tough on immigrants or whatever. Now, the city council can override the mayor, right? They can override a veto or a mayoral action. So if the mayor is sponsoring a city council action, you would need 50% plus one, right? A majority of the city council. But if the city council wanted to act without the mayor's approval, right, essentially override the mayor, they would need a 2/3 majority, which they do have. So the city council still can bypass the mayor on these things.
But in this appearance, they're indicating that the mayor and the Trump administration are working together to try to bypass the city council altogether. Doesn't that take it out of the hands of the system that is supposed to be there? It doesn't that give
Well,
cause for concern as far as the collusion or the mayor not being able to conduct the job properly?
the mayor can be aligned with the administration on immigration policy. That doesn't mean the mayor has to be
I'm
removed.
not talking about being aligned with them. That's true. I'm talking about specifically saying we are actively working to work to go around the city council. That to me seems to be a concerning. Not that he's in agreement with their way.
Yeah.
And let's be fair to Mayor Adams. If he is in agreement in some way, it's kind of understandable because the past couple of years he's had no support from Hochul or from the Biden administration in dealing with the immigrant crisis in New York. Over 200,000 coming in 1 year, and that's been on his shoulders while taking criticism if he's getting someone that's helping him in that regard, I can understand exploring that opportunity.
Right.
My issue is saying we are actively trying to circumvent the city council because we know they're going to push back against us.
But again, the city council with a 2/3 vote can override a mayoral veto, right, or mayoral action. So
Right. But if they find a way to work around that, and they're actively looking to work around that, they're trying to circumvent the system, doesn't that raise a flag?
it may raise a flag, but I mean, they're either going to do something legally or against the law, right? If they're doing something that's against what's lawful procedure, then a lawsuit can be filed and that can be challenged in court. So there are still checks and balances there. You don't necessarily have a quid pro quo established at that point, right? You're just having them working together to try to get something done that they both support and the city council is against. And that's not surprising, right? The mayor and the city council have clashed this entire time. It really doesn't surprise me or shouldn't surprise anyone that now the mayor and the president are going to be aligned on some of these issues against the New York City Council, which as a body is, let's be honest, ideologically to the left of both of them.
Right. I think to me this the idea of them trying to circumvent the system, circumvent those checks and balances is
Well,
concerning.
yeah, if that's what's actually happening. But again, if they take an action that's against what's allowed, that can also be challenged. You still do have a judicial branch. We can express cynicism about how that's been compromised, especially at the highest level,
Sure.
right? But it's still there, right? Does again, without proof, without legal proof, do you just remove the mayor? Or I guess what you're saying is even if you don't remove the mayor, maybe some of these other safeguards are more justified.
Right. This is and we identified it. Hochul's kind of in a pickle, so to say, where there is no proof, there is heavy speculation, and it kind of looks like, it kind of smells a little bad, and people want something done. So to me, this seems like a compromise in that regard.
Giving,
Um,
I mean, would you give all of those actors the ability? I mean, is there any limit on who should be able to sue the federal government on behalf of New York City? So
yes, there should be. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think
significant.
anyone should just be able to, yeah, on
Well, I mean,
behalf
but
of the city.
so you think it's appropriate that she gave it to these individuals, right? The significance of the controller and the public advocate is they are citywide elected officials, as is the mayor, right?
Hmm.
So all of the voters in New York City voted them into office. So I guess on some level you can look at them as kind of being at the same level since they were voted on by the whole city. What about the speaker of the city council? Why the speaker of the city council? The speaker of the city, I mean, let's just lay this out. The speaker of the city council was not elected speaker by the voters of New York City. The speaker
Mm,
was elected to city council by the voters of her own district, and then the
right,
city council members voted her speaker, right? So
right.
is it appropriate to give the speaker of the city council the ability to speak on behalf of the people of New York City in this way?
Probably not. I could see how they might try to rationalize it,
Mm-hmm.
saying that since she speaks for the city council and the city council is
Right.
we're all voted by the people, so
Yeah.
essentially it is a citywide
Collectively.
um,
Yeah.
collective.
Yeah.
Um, so I can see that rationale, but mm, that still puts her, even though she's a speaker, she could, with that power, she could act on her own if she has that power to bring forth the legislation. And in that capacity, she would only be representing herself in her district, and so that doesn't fulfill the line of having been elected by the citywide. So
Right.
it depends on how she's acting. So probably not appropriate. Maybe the other two only in that regard.
Mm. I think about how clumsy this can end up becoming now that you have all these different people with the ability to sue on behalf of New York City, because these folks, at least when it comes to the mayor and the others, are opposed, right? Their interests are not aligned at this point. So imagine you have the mayor filing lawsuits on certain things, or maybe not filing lawsuits now because of his relationship with the administration or whatever. But then you have the other folks filing their own cases. So the city of New York is going to almost be schizophrenic in the way it's approaching its legal action towards the federal government.
Yeah. So,
Again, I think this is why you should be careful about whom you're going to elect. The mayor has an
right.
important responsibility to act for the city. And now you're saying that you don't believe the mayor can do that anymore. So you're going to give multiple other people a big part of the mayor's job. To me, that's clunky. And I think thinking of it even as a lawyer, right, that may not lead to the best consequences here. Again, what, multiple lawsuits from the city of New York being filed by all these
Right.
different people with their own varying interests, as opposed to coming from one central place.
Right. So what are some of the other things that were put in place?
All right. Well, another guardrail here is expanding the state controller's oversight of the city. So that would be Thomas DiNapoli, we mentioned, as opposed to the city controller, right? The state
Hmm.
controller. In particular, the state controller is going to be looking at the city's financial dealings and whether there seems to be some kind of inappropriate involvement with the federal government.
I'm okay with that.
I am too. And I think, quite honestly, I didn't get the details on exactly how the power is being expanded, but the way it's being described in terms of taking a closer look at the dealings, I don't think that's ever really inappropriate. I think that they should be doing that regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It just adds another layer of, the checks and balances on there. So yeah, I'm cool with that.
Now, here's one that may be a little controversial because she's also talking about installing a special inspector general whose sole job will be to oversee the mayor. So now she's going to appoint a new person to basically be a watchdog on the mayor.
Okay, the mayor gets a nanny.
Yeah. Now, this is kind of what the public advocate is for, right? The public advocate of New York City doesn't have many real powers, but it's supposed to be a watchdog position, right? It's supposed to
Right.
keep the mayor in check in certain ways. And so if you're going to expand the state controller's responsibilities or task the state controller with keeping a closer eye on the mayor, why not do something like that with the public advocate? Oh, wait, I think I know why. Because Jumaane Williams ran against Kathy Hochul last time, and she probably doesn't want to give him more power.
Um, that's speculation there.
I
But
mean,
let me,
to be fair, she is giving him more power in the sense that he is now
right,
right able to sue, like we talked about.
right. See,
But she
see.
probably couldn't, though, if she was going to give it to the controller and the speaker of the city council. She couldn't leave the public advocate out. That would have been too transparent, right, of a political
Well,
move.
let me ask you, does this new position, does the power that they have, whoever's in that position, supersede the public advocate, or how different
So
is it from
it
the public
isn't.
advocate?
It isn't defined. This has just been
Mm,
an announcement at a press conference, and so we don't have actual details as to what exactly it's going to entail.
mm,
The public advocate, though, is pretty toothless in its responsibilities. They can't really do anything. It can just basically do press conferences and issue reports.
mm. So, yeah, so I guess we'll have to wait to see what power this person is given. Um, And maybe it's a direct line to the governor for the specific purposes of keeping a watch on this potential
Right,
collusion.
right. Now, so this one, I'm not sure about. I guess to say if I would support it or not, I would want to see a detailed list of what this power is going to be exactly.
Right.
Do it.
Absolutely.
The fact that she can just appoint someone, she's going to put someone in a new job essentially just to look at the mayor. That seems a little extra. Again, if you're going to these lengths, that's,
Right.
that's to me, you don't have faith in the mayor's ability to do his job. So remove him. It's like one of those things like where she's not willing to really take bold action, probably afraid of a primary, right? Let's also put this context in. The governor's approval rating is very low right now. And so
Right.
she is certainly concerned about her political future. You know what I mean? She doesn't want to lose the support of leaders around the city who have at least not been hostile to her. So
Um,
she has to be very careful with what she does. You know what I mean? I think this may be a way to try to serve as many masters, so to speak, as she can, right? Because there are people who obviously want to
mm,
see some kind of action taken, but then a lot of people who are saying we don't want him removed. So, you know, maybe she feels like her hand is forced. She has to do something, but she's not going to go all the way. So she's doing something kind of in the middle.
That's a potential, yeah, that's a possibility as well. I think also, as we've mentioned before, there isn't any concrete proof that he's doing any of the things. And so really, if she were to pull him without that, that would be heavily criticized as well. So yeah, I think aside from political strategy, this just could be a realistic middle ground here. Because if she pulls him and there, there is no proof, then it's like, okay, well, you just ripped out the head of New York City, like for no reason, you know, that would be an issue too.
Yeah, it would. And if she does nothing, then you're gonna have to,
Right.
you're the governor of New York. How come you're not fighting the administration on this when it looks like the mayor is involved inappropriately with them? So
Right. And I think another thing that we need to consider, um, even though, the governor has this power to remove the mayor, New York City is not just any other city.
yeah.
This is not only one of the biggest cities in the United States, population-wise, economics-wise, influence on the economy, but also globally. Like things in New York City at the government level need to be up to snuff because it can have wide-reaching effects.
Well, that was one of the points the governor made when she was explaining why she would not remove the mayor from office. So she started off the press conference by
Mm.
explaining that she was going to keep the mayor in. And this is before she got to the guardrails or the safeguards or whatever. It all started off, we're not going to pull the mayor. And a big rationale that the governor used was basically that this is the biggest and most important city in the whole country. And we have an election coming up this year. And so if you were to pull the mayor now, you would have another mayor or an acting mayor come in, and then there would be an election, and potentially another person would come in January. So you would be looking at a situation where the biggest city in the country would be run by three different people in a span of 1 year.
Right. And biggest city in one of the biggest cities in the world. I mean, that's, that has to be stated as well. Like that instability could, have a lot of impacts.
It's a valid point. It's a valid point.
Yeah.
Now, I want to put out there that these changes, these safeguards the governor is proposing are only set to last for this year. So
Okay.
when the new mayor comes in, whether that's Eric Adams or someone else, but there's going to be an election this year when next
Hmm.
year a mayor takes office again, those safeguards would be expired. However, they are subject to being renewed. So it's a wait and see type of thing, right? The governor
I
didn't
think
say
that's
it.
reasonable.
She didn't say it, but I think if you read between the lines, she's kind of implying that if Eric Adams were to somehow be reelected, she may consider
Right.
renewing these safeguards. But if there's a new mayor, probably not.
I think that's reasonable. Um, a lot of times when we see bodies put in these emergency measures or whatever, they tend to continue to last. And it's like, when will they ever get pulled back? And so I think that's reasonable. If this is specifically because of the questions surrounding Mayor Adams and his effectiveness, this should not be something that's permanent,
Is
and
there a
shouldn't flow
danger,
into the
though,
next mayor.
that there's pressure for this to be renewed? Now, some of this is going to require what's called a home rule message by the city council. So the city council is going to have to give authority, right? Give the authorization
Right.
to the state to do this. I'm sure they'll be happy to, especially when it comes to being able to sue the president and whatnot. So
You know.
it's going to become part of the political process now. I mean, once you give these folks a taste of that power, are they going to want to give it up? Are they going to be fighting for
No.
next year?
Right. And that's why I like the idea that it is temporary. Because like you said, once they get a taste of that power, that's you're not
It's
going to want to give that.
temporary, subject to renewal, though.
But
So,
subject to renewal at the behest of the governor.
well, but it's going to be a whole negotiation, right? Are they going to be coming back
I
into
think it needs to be.
in January saying we demand this power continue? What if, for example, the speaker of the city council starts filing all these lawsuits against the president and their city council members like, we don't want to lose that power. We want to keep going to the speaker and saying, follow this one, follow this one, follow this one.
Sure, I'm sure they're going to want to, but I don't think it has to be a negotiation at that point, especially with Hochul saying up front, this is temporary. When it comes to the next mayor that comes in, city council can say, well, we don't want to give up this power. And she's like, well, I told you from the beginning, this is temporary.
Yeah,
This is not in your purview. So,
yeah, she can say that, but now it becomes subject to the political process, right? What if these leaders say, well, we're not going to support your reelection, and, kiss your ass goodbye as governor if you don't give us that power? I mean, you're kind of playing with fire, is my point.
yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Personally, I would take it to the public then, because then at that point, it's like your city council's going for a power grab and let the people know that.
Yeah, but that becomes the fight. They're not going to characterize it that way. They're going to say they followed
Of
all
course,
these amazing lawsuits against the administration over the past year.
yeah, but I like it that it's temporary because imagine if that changed and then other city councils wanted that same power. Now it becomes like a trend, and now you got you know
Right, right. Well, that's what I'm afraid is going to happen now, and we'll see.
yeah.
We'll see if it really lapses. But this is the solution the governor has proposed. I did
Right.
see something funny, which was right after this press conference when the governor announced all of this. The mayor was doing a press conference on some project he was pushing in the Bronx. I forget the project it was, but it was some kind of development, I believe, right? And he was talking about all this change that's coming to the Bronx. They're going to, build something up, whatever it is. Well, the mayor's people made it clear that when they opened the floor for questions, that the
Hmm.
reporters were not allowed to ask about anything aside from this project. In other words, they didn't want the reporters asking about what the governor just announced about the mayor. But they had to try to get those
Of
questions
course,
anyway, right? So
of
they,
course, and they should.
but it was kind of funny to watch it. It looked like kind of like a sitcom or something you might see on Veep or something. Like the mayor's spokesperson basically said, we're going to shut down this press conference the next time a reporter tries asking one of those questions, right? Like no off topic questions, right? Or we'll shut down the whole press conference. So does anyone have a question specifically about this project here in the Bronx that we're talking about today, right? A reporter says, all right, I'll ask the question. And the question comes, this is Mayor Adams, this is a very ambitious project that you are pitching here in the Bronx. And he goes, yes, I was excited to start talking about it. Immediately follows up with, well, given the governor's recent announcement, do you fear that you won't be able to get the interagency cooperation that you might need, considering she's severely limiting your power? And I said, all right, that's it. Press conference over. Press conference over. And they pulled him off stage.
That's funny. I mean, listen, answer the question, guy. You know, answer the question. Um, yeah, it's I don't like that. And we're seeing that more and more where they're controlling what can be talked about and what can be asked. I don't like that. There was a clip recently with a U.S. ambassador to uh, I forget what country that was, one of the European countries, and he was trying to avoid these questions, and multiple reporters had asked in that country, and they're like, "Listen, that's not how it works here in this country. You have to answer questions." They told the U.S. ambassador that.
Yeah,
Um,
but I also understand. I mean, come on, guy. Like the reporter was pretending to ask about the project, but was really trying to
because they were being,
push his question through.
yeah, but they were, of course. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense, you know. Like, you can't like, blow up something over here and then, create something small over here and expect people only to talk about that thing while there's
Well, I
a
know. Right. But they specifically said they were only taking questions on this project. And so the reporter said,
too
all right,
bad.
ask a question on this project, but really was trying to trick them, right? They're
Yeah,
clearly being
I
manipulated
get that.
questions. So I was like, it made me laugh because the reporter kind of came off as like a child. I was like, this is like, we're like a 6-year-old trying, you know what I mean? Like trying to manipulate his way into getting ice cream or something.
Because that's what everyone wanted to talk about. I get it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I understand being upset that the
right.
conversation was shut off. But then make that the story. Say that the
Right.
mayor wouldn't take any questions on this very important thing, as opposed to saying, "All right, I'll ask a question about your project," and then try to trick them, because he wasn't tricking anyone. You know what I mean? That's what
Right. Right.
a very transparent attempt to ask.
Yeah.
They just told him he couldn't ask about.
Yeah. And maybe this was in their eyes, a transparent attempt by the mayor to shift the focus of what's going on in this very unprecedented situation with him
Sure.
and the governor and the administration.
But you can say that without trying to trick anyone. You're not tricking anyone. You know what I mean? Like you're saying, "I'll follow instructions. I'll ask about this project," and then you don't really ask about the project. You're asking about the thing.
Technically they did ask about the project,
But they
I get
knew,
it.
they should have known, right? If they had any kind of intelligence, they should have known that that question was not going to be answered. So, unless
Yeah.
for like like a memeable or a viral kind of moment.
Yeah.
So,
So, well, we
yeah,
did.
I thought it was funny.
Um, so we did talk about this situation with the mayor and the governor last week. We had the poll. Um, you want to get into those poll results?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So we put up the poll last week, when it wasn't hadn't been decided yet what Hochul was going to do. And so we asked, should Hochul remove or Governor Hochul, let me say this properly. Should the governor remove New York City Mayor Eric Adams from office, or should the voters decide his fate in this year's election?
Mm.
And so we had a result of 83% said yes, 17% said no.
17% said the voters should decide.
Yeah. So
Wow,
83% said the governor should remove Adams from office.
that surprises me. Usually, people
Yeah.
side with the voters.
First comment in one word, yes. Um, what was another comment here? I'm for the voters deciding. New York's mayoral removal process is so convoluted, it's never been used, and the governor has to serve as the judge in hearings in the process, so it's basically unusable. Is there any chance of a state criminal investigation? So that was a question there. Someone said she should remove him, but that would take a spine, so she won't. I guess not a Hochul fan. Another one here. Voters did decide Hochul was elected. She has this power and she should use it. She should effing use it. Democrats need to get a lot more comfortable with using the power voters give to them, and they need to do so quickly.
Okay,
That's
but
an interesting point.
to that point, the voters also did decide to put Eric Adams in as mayor for 4 years. And
Sure.
they also, whether they realize it or not, decided to give him the sole responsibility of suing the federal government on behalf of the city. That's, again,
Right.
a core component of the mayor's job. So
Sure.
if the
Both are valid points, I think.
if the governor is not confident in his ability to do that job, why is she keeping him in office?
Yeah. So this person was saying that voters, he agrees with the vote that the voters should decide. He said in 99.9% of the case, I'm against removals or recalls. The voters must know there are consequences to their vote. Now, if he were to be convicted, that'd be another story. But the orange agent put a stop to that. Um, I think that's a good point as well. Um, and this idea that we may not know if he would actually be convicted or not if this investigation was halted. So that may be cause as well for Hochul to take some sort of oversight steps.
That it may be caused because he might have been convicted if he wasn't.
Because there was this evidence, there was enough evidence for them to bring this indictment to, and it was blocked by this potential cozying up to the administration. So, and it
Again,
wasn't like minor things. This was collusion with a foreign government. That's not small.
well, everyone is entitled to the presumption of innocence. So he wasn't.
Absolutely.
I understand what you're saying. Now, to that
But
point,
they weren't allowed to even get to that point.
well, and to that point, the court is now asking the prosecutors to present their rationale as to why the charges should be dropped. And so
Right.
maybe we should wait for a judge to rule on that point, right? To
Right.
decide whether it is appropriate for the charges to be dropped or if it looks like this is strictly being done for political purposes. And,
Right.
and I think a lot of us think we have the answer to that, but there still is a process, there's still a legal process.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
I just wanted to point out, I looked up really quickly the latest poll I could find on Governor Hochul's approval rating. Now, her job approval rating, interestingly, sits between 44 and 48%, which doesn't sound terrible, though it is technically underwater. But here's, I think, an interesting stat: 31% of voters say they would reelect Hochul. 57% of voters say they want somebody else. So that's a pretty big jump
Mm,
that she only
right.
has the support, even though it looks like almost half of the voters say she's doing a fair job. Only about 31%, so about a third of the voters want to see her get another term.
Mm.
You
Now,
know,
someone here, and I don't get their point here, but they said, I am usually for action, but in this case, I think it helps Democrats to leave Adams in place and to keep his selling out on full parade.
okay,
How
I
would
understand
that help? How would that help Democrats?
because he wants to make a show of it. He wants to show what's going on with Adams.
I get that, but that could be detrimental to New York City.
Sure.
One other comment here says he can do so much damage in a year serving as Trump's lapdog in NYC. The time to remove him was yesterday, actually way before that. But I think the main point here is that if he is in that position, they could do a lot of damage to NYC.
Right.
Trump's got a hate hard on for New York because they've, come after him.
Let me ask you this though: do you think that he is going to act as mayor over the next year much differently than he would have acted anyway, without this potentially hanging over his head, right? Without the threat, let's say, of being re-indicted from Trump. Do or without him thinking he owes Trump a favor or whatever it is. Do you think he was,
Yeah.
he was kind of on that tip even before that, wasn't he?
Um, I think it to really answer that, it would depend on the nature of the cooperation with the Trump administration and what they're trying to cooperate on. So far from what I've seen, it seems like it's at first talking about this immigration issue, right? Like they want to get into Rikers for some reason. They want to, do some of these things. Um, so in regards to the immigration issue, I think he's going to be changing a little bit because he seemed to have been steadfast on this idea that we are, this sanctuary situation and all this and that. But he also was very pragmatic and realistic that we can't really go on this way.
You're right.
Um,
He was
so,
campaigning, his rhetoric was different than what it
but I don't
became.
think he was looking for going the deportation and an ICE route.
Well, no, when he was campaigning, he was saying how we are a city of immigrants and we welcome everyone, basically. But then when he
Right.
got into office and the busing of the migrants commenced, and he saw the strain it was putting on the city's resources, right, and his ability to run the city, then his tone changed. Now, maybe understandably so at that point, the situation
Sure.
changed. But
Absolutely.
at least since that started happening very early into his term, he's been kind of on that tough on crime, tough on immigration kick. So I'm not sure if he's really switching course from that now that this is going on with his indictment.
But I mean, like, um, I and I could be wrong, but I don't think he would have been on board with this idea that the administration is pushing with, where they're flooding areas with ICE agents, or they're talking about putting immigrants into Guantanamo.
Mhm.
Um, that doesn't jive with this idea that we're a city of immigrants and we welcome immigrants here. So if
Oh,
he
yeah.
goes along with that, the actions that have those results, I think that would be a little bit different than what he would have done before.
Maybe pushes him even further. Although
Yeah.
he was saying he needed help from the federal government when Biden,
Absolutely.
right?
And he did.
Yeah,
I
we
agree.
need
I think
more
he did.
to crack down on this. New York City can't sustain this. Remember, he said that this was going to make us broke or whatever, and a lot of people freaked out about that. That he was being
Right.
xenophobic and racist and whatever. But he did kind of wave the flag on that, right? Ring the alarm.
But
So
and I
in
agree.
that
You
regard,
know,
I think he's been somewhat consistent. When it comes to the sanctuary city, I think he was kind of playing politics with that a little bit because he would say, listen, the law is the law and I can't change it, so don't ask me about it. That was basically his
right.
on that stuff.
Yeah. I think understanding that this is a real situation and there's a limited budget, and people keep coming in. I don't think there's anything wrong with acknowledging that situation, and he should have done that. So I agree that I think the next step, the one that the Trump administration is pushing with, the ICE agents and the Guantanamo, I think that's a different step than what he was talking about. And so that when you asked if he would do anything different, I think there's a point there.
You think that's different. So do you think that you will see the mayor stand up to the federal administration at all? Will he push
No,
back at all over this next year, over the next 10 months, let's say, that he has in office, most likely?
no, I don't think so.
You don't think you'll see even an ounce of pushback? He won't even get on TV and say they're going too far. This is wrong. We're in New York City.
No.
We understand the need to do something, but come on, guys, let's put a foot down. Something. He won't say any of that. You don't think?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, that's an interesting prediction, right? Like, will he even push back symbolically, even if he's not really going to do anything? Is he even going to show? Because he is running. Let's put this out there. As of yesterday, he's making it official. He's going to petition to get back on the ballot as a Democratic candidate for mayor this year. So, how are you going to win a Democratic primary in New York City in the year 2025 if you're not pushing back against the president at all?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think I think by and large, he's going to, he's going to gargle the nuts. I think that's,
Well, a second. I said, okay, you just said by and large. I said at all. Those are two different things. I agree.
oh, what I mean by that is that, he's going to phrase it a little bit more eloquently, right? I don't think he's going to get on TV and push back on things like that. I think it'll be more like, oh, he has his opinion, I have mine, but in action, it won't be anything, right? He's going to
I agree with
say
that.
what the campaign probably requires him to say.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Yeah, I know. I
Yeah,
agree that it's probably just going to be rhetoric, but I'm just wondering what that rhetoric is going to look like
you're
when
right.
trying to simultaneously be mayor for next year, work with the
Yeah,
administration, and run for reelection in a Democratic primary in New York City in the year 2025 with all that's going on. How is his rhetoric going to look?
yeah,
Oh, again, I think it's going to be largely symbolic. I don't think he's really going to do anything, but I think he may try to push back a little bit, at least in rhetoric, but in a way that seems to him to be unoffensive to Trump.
right. Yeah, yeah. But and I don't call that pushback though. I don't think that's pushback. I think that's just
Well, I mean, like, is he going to say, I think this is too far? Whatever. Like, today he's proposing to do X, Y, and Z. I think that's a little too far. Whoa, let's not do that. Like,
I don't think it's gonna go there. I think it'll be more like instead of saying it's too far, because that's quite definitive in a stance. I think it's like, oh, we have to keep all options on the table, or we have to explore this and that, or it'd be something that's ambiguous.
all right, but
I'll be surprised if
if
it's
he's
more
pressed on
definitive.
it, if he's pressed on it, Mayor Adams, do you or do not support this policy? Yes or
They're
no?
gonna say if he's pressed on, it's gonna be up. Press conference over.
Press
Press
conference
conference
on the
over.
stage.
We're talking about this project here. What are you talking
Right,
about?
right. So, what does this have to do with this playground in the Bronx?
Right, absolutely.
So,
So
yeah, we'll see how that looks. We'll see how that.
right, we'll see
I
how that
think
plays out.
I don't know. I think he has to say something, but I agree he's going to try to do it in an artful way. That's probably going to be clumsy, but I think he's going to try to take a stand on some things, even if, like you said, he might try to then throw in there, well, listen, we have a difference of opinion. That's fine. Sometimes people disagree. You might try to make it sound nice, but
Right.
I think maybe you'll find at least one thing somewhere along the way where he says, this is not what we stand for here, and we're not going to do, we don't support doing it this way. I don't know. I could be wrong on that. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
You
So,
know, to be honest, it might not even matter because what's he really going to do? You know, that's kind of the thing. I think he's politically kind of a dead duck at this point. And I did see some of the voting in these political club meetings, right? When they're voting on whom the club will endorse for mayor.
mm,
And I'm seeing Adams throw up zeros, which is quite
mm,
impressive for an incumbent mayor, right? You'll see things
mm,
like, oh, wow, Scott Stringer and Brad Lander, they're only getting 12 and 9%. Like we thought they would do better in that room. All these club members, I guess, not too high on them. Oh, look,
mm.
this guy gets this person gets this. Eric Adams, 0 votes, not a 1 vote in the whole room. That's unprecedented.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, it's gonna be a tough year there, buddy.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
appreciate everyone answering and participating in the poll. Leave
yeah.
your comments as well. Subscribe to the channel. You know, I like what I don't know if you've ever noticed in the YouTube, if you say the word subscribe in the video, um, on the YouTube page, the subscribe button kind of highlights.
I did not know that. I thought,
Yes.
if anything, the creators of the video were making some kind of graphic to put the subscribe.
No, no. It's YouTube thing. So if you just say subscribe, like it does some kind of like highlight around the subscribe button.
By the way, speaking of YouTube videos, I am planning on dropping my vlog tomorrow. I really wanted to get it out already, though I pushed it back a few days. This is annoying, and maybe it shouldn't be annoying. If you listen to the advice from the YouTube gurus, they'll tell you this is no big deal, let it go. But because I've been working on this video for some time, it's my first big vlog I'm putting out. I wanted to get it right. I did an export of the video and I uploaded a test copy to YouTube. And for a few frames, I would say for about a second or two, it glitches out at one point. Like it just the picture just turns white or whatever, like it's like all washed out, and then it goes back into normal. It's not really a big deal. It's only for like a second or two, but to put so much time and effort into it and have it do that kind of bugs me. Like I said, I'm sure most people, if you follow the advice, would be like, listen, it's content. Who cares? The screen gets whitewashed for 2 seconds. Let it go. It's not a big, you know what I mean?
Nah, nah, nah. You fix that. You want to fix that.
I want to fix
Did
it.
you let it finish processing first? Maybe it was a processing issue,
I
not in
don't
the
think
original.
so. I think it happened on export. I'll go back and check it again now that it's been sitting for a while to see if that was the
Right.
case. But I've also been trying to re-export the video, and here's what's annoying: it's been giving me errors when I try to re-export it. So that
Mm.
export that I did came out nice and clean, aside from that 1 or 2 second glitch. It hasn't been letting me thus far re-export without the system crashing or getting error or whatever. So I'm going to try for another day or so, and I think at some point you got to call it. You got to just say, "Here's the video."
Or, I mean, if it's just a second glitch, what you can do is take that exported video, put that into the editor, go in, cut out that glitch part, and it pushes the both sides together, and then it's no longer there, and then export that.
Yeah, but there's audio at the same time.
Yeah,
Well,
that becomes a problem.
yeah, the audio is not glitching. It's just the video. It's a nice shot of the beach in Miami. It's a beautiful shot, nice colors and everything.
All right.
Just like a second or two, like it flickers white and then it goes back to its regular color.
Well, if it's like one frame or something
It's
like
not
that,
one frame though. It's like a second or two, so it's probably like 30 or 60 frames.
another fix would be to go to the last frame before it flickers and take a still shot from that frame and extend that for 1 second.
Yeah, I can look. You mean do that with the exported video?
Yeah.
I could try.
If you can't get the original to export, without the glitch, which
And
I
you
don't
also
see why you shouldn't be able to,
right,
but
right. But then you also run into this idea of you're exporting an exported video. So it's kind of like taking a photocopy of a photocopy. Like at some point, you feel like even if it's minimal, you're losing some quality by doing that.
yeah, you'll be fine with that. I think
I mean, you balance it, but
visually,
do you want the glitch or do you want to photocopy the photocopy?
right, yeah. So,
Yeah, I would like to just have it clean without the glitch, but well, we'll see. It's funny because if I watch someone else's video and they have something like that in there, I don't care, and I might even assume that it's not a glitch in the video. I might think that my connection was buffering or cut out for a second. You know what I mean? Like if
right.
it's a little glitch for a second of someone's video, who really cares? But when it's your own, you have a high bar.
You have to show me that offline. Send me the
Yeah,
link and to the timestamp and I'll
I'll
see.
show it to you. Yeah, it's on unlisted video right now. I'll send you the link later.
So we need a poll for this week.
Yeah, so let's do it because our next topic is going to be about the mayor's race and a new poll. Speaking of polls, right, that came out
Hmm.
in the New York City mayor's race. So our poll question of the week is: do you believe former Governor Andrew Cuomo should join the race for New York City mayor? And we ask that because officially he has not declared, waiting to the last minute. Petitioning has begun. He is expected to make that announcement anytime now because these petitions got to get out there. To get on the ballot, you got to get the signatures, right? So you can't not do that if you want to get on. And
Hmm.
it does look like that's where we're going, especially when the polls come out showing him with such a commanding lead, even without being officially in the race.
Hmm. Yeah, so we'll see what people think about that.
Yeah. So let's take, do we have this up here? A snapshot of the race for New York City mayor as it stands now, or at least as of the latest polling. You did have Cuomo with that big lead, as we mentioned.
And he's had it for a while.
Yes, he has. Although there have been warnings that historically, at least over the past few election cycles, the candidate leading early on has not won, right? We saw it with Anthony Weiner. We saw it with Andrew Yang. Will
Hmm.
history repeat itself? I don't know. We are getting closer and closer. The primary is in June. And so there isn't a whole lot of time. But then again, a few months can be an eternity in politics too. So a lot can change. The question becomes,
Right.
if not Cuomo, then who? So let's take a quick look at the state of the race. We've got Cuomo in the lead with, and I hate how these articles don't just give you a listing. You got to scroll through their paragraphs. Do we have him at 37? Was that what it was? Hold on a
Good.
second. 38. We've got Cuomo
38.
with 38%. Now, here's an interesting one. This candidate, and by the way, I met him a few times personally, Assemblyman Zoran Mamdani. He is the DSA endorsed candidate in the race. So he's as progressive, as leftist as it gets in this field. He is currently polling in second place with 12%.
Hmm.
Now, here's the thing: there does seem to be a concerted effort to prop him up. And I'm seeing it
Hmm.
if you look on Twitter and you look at what's being posted by the political reporters in New York City, it almost has become a bit of a joke that this guy is being covered to the extent he is. Some people
Hmm.
are saying, listen, what was the metaphor you just used? Gargling that's the vibe that some are getting with him. Like they'll report anything he does as big news. I think it's because a lot of these folks are either DSA members or are aligned with that ideology. And so they're pushing the most left leaning candidate in the field. If he's the alternative to Cuomo, I think we're in trouble if you don't want Cuomo to win. You know what I mean? I don't think he's going to do it given the current makeup of the electorate. I don't think the DSA candidate who's taking these far left positions is going to win a primary in New York City this year. I think
Right.
the reason why Cuomo is doing as well as he is because he's not that. Now I know there are some looking for an alternative to that, and so maybe he is emerging at this point as the progressive alternative, good luck. You know what I mean? Good luck with that. I don't know. You also have other candidates in the progressive lane, but here's the difference, I think. And maybe this explains in part why Mamdani is rising a little bit. Brad Lander and Scott Stringer are in this race. They're currently polling at 7% and 5%. Some people are surprised. Scott Stringer is the current, Brad Lander is the current city controller, a citywide official, right? He won his race for controller with the votes of New York City on the whole. Why is he only getting 7% right now? Why is former controller Scott Stringer getting 5%? Part of the reason might be because they're trying to moderate their messaging at this point. Especially Lander, right? Lander has been seen as a progressive. He's trying to present himself as being more pragmatic because he's trying to win now citywide in this climate, right? In the current political climate in New York City. And so he's trying not to present himself as being so far left. So we see Cuomo occupying most of that space now. I think you're seeing Lander and Stringer maybe trying to cut into that Cuomo block, but then it does kind of leave a lane open for someone like Mamdani to say, no, I'm unabashedly DSA. I'm unabashedly a socialist. He says, I'm not afraid of the word. He calls himself.
Right.
So not saying that's going to be enough to win by any stretch, but maybe that explains why his numbers are going up, because there are some people, right? That does appeal to some people. And the ones who were maybe seen as more progressive are trying not to brand themselves that way anymore, where he is.
Right.
So
yeah,
could explain part of what we're seeing here. Some people are also saying he's running a really good campaign. I'll say this, to his credit, I'm sure I disagree with him on many, if not most, policy points. He does support the Queens Link, and he did show up at the press conference we did in front of City Hall for the Queens Link. So
right. I think,
he's not afraid to say what he believes, whether you agree or disagree.
right. And this we've demonized. There's been a lot in the environment to demonize the word socialism, and socialist, even though we do have a form of democratic socialism in some regards. Um, I guess it depends on what he stands on. Um, so, but Cuomo's in the lead now, so we'll have to see if that works out.
With the commanding lead. Now,
But he hasn't announced yet.
yeah, I think he's afraid that when he announces, his numbers are only going to go down.
They're gonna be like, no, no, we like the idea, but not the reality.
Right. Well, when he officially gets in the race, then you'll start seeing an outpouring of attacks on him.
Absolutely.
All this-
Right. Because right now,
Yeah.
yeah, there's no reason to attack him. It's just like, people are speculating.
Right. And they're probably stockpiling that ammunition for when he does get in the race. Right.
Oh yeah, yeah. Are you kidding? There's probably content and uh press releases already drafted.
So
They're
here's,
just sitting there
yeah,
waiting.
here's what I'm wondering. Are there going to be more women coming forward and accusing him of things? Right. Because that was what they kind of got him on when he was governor.
I would imagine anyone that is really taking him as a serious threat and believing that he's going to get in has probably already done a little bit of that legwork,
Mhm.
looking for someone so that they can hit the ground day one. Like you said, there's not much time left. So if he does jump in the race, whatever their pushback against him is gonna have to come hard and fast.
Yeah.
And
And it will.
so
And it
I'm
will.
sure
And those
there's
same
already
old
somebody
stories.
doing that work.
Those same old stories are going to reemerge. And I've seen some of them, right? Like that report that came out from the Attorney General's office, right? I think it was Tish James's office, saying that there was some inappropriate behavior. Um, I don't think it went as far as accusing him of crimes, if I'm not mistaken, but I think it was
Mm,
stuff like unwanted touching, hugging too long, or I don't know if there was incidental touching of a bosom or something of that nature, but I don't know. There was
right.
something there, and people certainly try to make a big deal of it. But then when I talked to a lot of voters A lot of people I'd speak to seem to think that that card was overplayed.
See, I think yeah, when you say things like that, like accidental touching of this or a hug that lasted too long, I think it needs to be some clarification from saying that inappropriate things happen. Because that is so wide. We don't know what that means. It needs to be clarified. You know what I mean? Because you do run that risk of overplaying that hand.
Right.
And we don't want that because when cases are real, we want them to be handled swiftly and effectively. So I
So
think
here
it,
is this is an take it for what it's worth. This is from NPR, but I just pulled this up on a quick Google search where they said that this is back when he was governor, right? He's being accused of all this stuff. He won't be charged for touching a female trooper. So that was the accusation there.
Mhm.
And
But what kind of touching? Was it something that was misconstrued? Was it something that was an accident? Was it something that was blatant that he was trying to pass off as an accident? Like what kind of touching?
so we can only go by what the accusations are as well, right? And I'm sure.
Right. That's what I mean. I think it needs to be clarified. Did he walk up and go honk, you know what I mean? And do
Well,
something blatant or
here is what the trooper said, right? That Cuomo ran the palm of his left hand across her abdomen to her belly button and then to her right hip, where she kept her gun, while she had a door open for him as he left an event at Belmont Park in 2019. The trooper told investigators that his conduct made her feel completely violated because to me, like that's between my chest and my privates. So it seems like he's holding the door open for her. I guess she's walking through and he's putting his hand in a spot that she thought violated her.
right. Yeah. I think, is it, I can see that go either way. It
It's
could
hard,
have
it's
been
hard to really make a judgment on that because you're not there and you're not seeing what it.
right. Because I mean, we've all gone through doors, and this is not to speculate anything on her credibility or anything like that, but I'm saying we've all gone through, passed by someone, and just in the flow of movement, they've put their hand on you, like, okay, yeah, yeah, you good, just that, that type of thing. Um, some people could feel uncomfortable about that. Others it could be an innocuous thing. It's not something they're thinking about. So it's hard to make that judgment. And it doesn't mean that she wasn't right in feeling uncomfortable,
Sure.
but
Sure.
we need to be very clear on this thing so these things don't get overplayed and overblown.
Yeah. And who knows how it went down, but if someone is walking through a door and you're kind of like guiding them through, maybe
Right.
it's a place he wasn't intending to touch. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. But
Yeah, absolutely. But from that explanation,
yeah.
if he went to the abdomen and the belly button, that does, it does make it a little bit more flaggish.
Well,
Because,
apparently there
but again, there's no, it's hard to distinguish there.
apparently there were many accusations of quote unquote flirtatious and creepy behavior
Mm,
with this particular trooper. And in the report, I think there were other instances that were mentioned from people who worked for him or who were around him.
right.
I did mention, I did, well, I guess I should say I will mention something that I saw. There was a video that was floating around of him at a wedding. I think it was
Mm,
a wedding reception. And he was governor at the time. He was making remarks that kind of felt over the line to me
right.
in watching the
Okay.
video. I don't know if you ever saw this, but it was it was I guess it was when the food was being served or something like that, right? A bunch of people were sitting around a table, and there was a woman there who says something about uh, eating. She doesn't want to eat the whole sandwich or something like that, and he was making some kind of jokes like, "Oh, you got to eat the meat. You got to finish the meat. Come on, you got to eat the meat." He was kind of like giggling when he said it, like it was meant. It seemed to be like suggestive and kind of like innuendo, and for the governor
Right.
joking that way did strike me as a bit inappropriate.
Right.
With that said, does he need to resign over that? I don't know.
Right. So it sounds like there could be a pattern of excessive familiarity. with the governor
That
at the least,
that seems plausible.
at the least.
Right.
Whether,
And with that said, he was never charged with any crimes or anything like that.
right, right,
There's never been a credible accusation of sexual assault, right, or anything that would
right.
rise to the level of being actionable. And I do believe um, we should probably verify this as well. But if there were civil complaints, I do believe those were dropped.
Okay, okay. Yeah. So, yeah, these are things he's going to be facing when, if he decides to go ahead and get in the race and make it official. And like you said, I'm sure they're going to be looking for others to pop up if they can find some. I'm sure someone's digging into that right now, just in case. And on his side, I'm sure he's prepared. They're preparing defense before announcing.
Right. And,
um,
you also have Anthony Weiner running for city council at the same time. And
Right,
something similar happened when
right,
Anthony Weiner ran for mayor last time. If you remember, he ran for mayor in 2013. You had Elliot Spitzer, who was the former governor of New York, who also resigned in scandal, right? He ran
right,
for controller at the same time Anthony Weiner was running for mayor. And what ended up happening was they were both attempting to come back at the same time, but it seemed like
right,
they were almost hurting each other because people associated them together, right? You would see news stories come out about them running, them both attempting political comebacks after being disgraced. And so when,
right,
for example, a bad story would come out about Weiner, well, that would hurt Spitzer as well because people kind of put them in the same boat. So I'm wondering if a similar effect could happen here where
right.
Weiner is running for city council in Manhattan. And so if more stories come out about Weiner, for example, now, will that hurt Cuomo, right? If people are putting them in the same.
Right. Yeah, I can, in that situation, whoever's writing the article, usually, and this is how the flow happens, usually at the bottom of the article, they'll say like, oh, these allegations are similar to, and then they bring up other related or somewhat related incidences with other politicians, and that puts their name in the middle of something that they weren't in. So, yeah, that would definitely, I could see that definitely happening.
And that just becomes part of the zeitgeist, right?
Right,
It's
right. This comes amid the bid for
yeah,
Cuomo to
right.
get back into the political game after his scandal, which
Yeah, 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 exactly, exactly. And then people say, well, we don't want one, but we would want the other one,
Right, right, absolutely.
Yeah,
So,
that is something to think about. Now, I was going to mention, because we were wondering, is there anyone else who can emerge as a credible threat? Adrienne Adams is being asked to run out. She is termed out as city council member, right? So she is the current
right,
speaker, but unless she runs for something, she won't be in elective office come next year. So she is being asked supposedly by Tish James to run for mayor. There's no love lost now between Tish James and Andrew Cuomo. We just talked about the Tish
right.
reports trying to get him out of office, right? I think she thought she was going to become governor coming
Shout
up.
out to her. She's a beast. But go
Well,
ahead.
I think that she thought that by pushing Cuomo out of office, it would open up the seat for her to become governor because she was briefly running for it. And
Mm,
she quickly saw that the unions and all the institutions were coalescing behind Hochul, who was the lieutenant governor who had inherited the governorship, right?
right,
And so she backed off. But I do think that was her play. I think she thought that if she can force him out of the governor's seat, it would open up for her and everyone would just kind of roll out the red carpet for her. That didn't happen. So
well, if that was her motive, like, I'm taking back my shout out, like Jadakiss taking back his dap.
that was Nori. Jadakiss was telling the story.
Oh yeah, and like Nori taking back his dap. Yeah,
He was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
you and me first, like you and me, and then like he rewinds time, like goes like this, and he's like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
he's like forget that I just shook your hand.
yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, it seems like if you believe this reporting, right, that Tish James is pushing Adrienne Adams to run for mayor, and that is interesting to me, even though she's only polling at 2% now. Doesn't really matter. She hasn't officially gotten in, and people don't really know her like that. Like they know Cuomo. Cuomo, I think, is getting the huge numbers based off name recognition primarily, and the fact
Right.
people tended to like the job he did as governor. Well, if Adrienne Adams gets in the race, it can be interesting in that Cuomo and Adams share a similar base
Mm,
because Adrienne Adams is from Southeast Queens, right?
mm,
That is her political base. That is also where Andrew Cuomo gets his most support. If you look at his numbers, if you break down who's really supporting Cuomo, is mostly moderate, or I would say center to center left Black voters, largely in areas like Southeast Queens. So if Adrienne Adams were to get into that race and gain traction, she, I think, can pull from Cuomo in a way that no other candidate in this race can.
Mm-hmm. That would be interesting.
Right. And who would benefit from that? I mean, would they cannibalize each other, or with ranked choice voting, will that not matter? I mean, like let's say she just pulls, I don't know, 15% of his votes away, but then she gets knocked off. Well, they'll go right back to Cuomo at the end if they put Cuomo as their number two. I
Right.
did take a look at, and of course, this is not scientific, this isn't definitive, but shout out to Aaliyah Abraham. She was on here a while back. She runs the Black Resource Network, right?
Right.
I did take a look at a post that was on there about Cuomo potentially entering this race. And I got to say, this group is based primarily in Southeast Queens, right? There were a large number of comments, many, many comments here of people highly supportive of Cuomo running, right? All in for Cuomo.
Right.
So if Adrienne Adams, who is from these neighborhoods, right, gets in the race, how does that change the dynamic? Does it pull from Cuomo support?
Right. Shout out to Adrienne Adams. She's been on her hustle, like from the community boards. Remember when we used to see her at
So,
the community boards?
yeah, speaking of someone we've known for a long time, we knew her before she got into the city council. In fact, before she even became president of the community board. Remember, she ran and she lost again.
Right.
Jacqueline,
We were there.
we were there when she lost, and she, was not happy about that. She eventually won, right?
Right.
She won that
Right.
spot. Then she ran for Senate and lost, and finally city council when Reuben Wills had to leave office. So yeah, she's had quite the journey over these past 13 years.
Yeah, as I remember talking to her that night after that because I was impressed by the way she spoke up and her and I spoke on that. So yeah, so it's crazy how far she's come.
Yeah, yeah, as a potential mayoral candidate. But listen, the outgoing speaker of the city council often does run for mayor, right? Look at Melissa Mark Viverito or Christine Quinn or uh, Valone. I think even Valone, if I'm not mistaken, ran for mayor. I mean, it does seem to be the tradition. So
Mm.
they haven't
Well,
won yet, but there could always be a first. And also, we
right,
mentioned the mayorship is historically a dead end job. So if Cuomo
right.
were to win this job and then think of it as a stepping stone for something else, historically that never has worked. No one who's been mayor of New York City has ever advanced beyond that in history. So that's
Right.
maybe not a good omen for him. Why not run for governor again? We talked about earlier how Hochul's approval is low. At least only 31% of New Yorkers say they'd vote for her again. I think Cuomo could beat her in a primary. Why doesn't he run for that instead?
Yeah, good question. Maybe, maybe he doesn't want to. You know, maybe he's not
No.
looking for an extended career stay. I'm sure he could comfortably retire right now if he wanted to. Um, getting into it is probably more of a want than a need, I would imagine. Maybe he just wants to.
But here's the thing about it. He's not a New York City guy. Yes, he was born and raised in Jamaica Estates, right? Okay, so Queens native, you can say.
Right.
But he hasn't lived in New York City for so long. He's been, Westchester, Mount Kisco, or whatever, outside the city for decades.
Yeah, it doesn't make
He's not a New York City guy really anymore. So why does he want to be mayor of New York City? It seemed to me like it was just a political move for him to try to make a comeback. He
maybe he
thought that
sees
was
there's a problem and he wants to get in and thinks it needs to be fixed. So I think before the scandal, eh, eh, he wasn't a disliked governor for the
no,
most.
no. I mean, he certainly had his enemies. The progressives never liked him,
Sure,
but he was seen
sure.
as effective. And
Maybe
really,
he thinks he can fix New York
he was
if it.
christened as America's governor during COVID, right? Because he would do the press conferences all the time, and he
Right, right, right.
got no traction for that.
So yeah,
He was
maybe he
talking
thinks
about him
that's
running for president before he resigned from the governorship. So
right.
I don't know. I think would probably want to get back into that conversation. I'm just wondering if becoming mayor of New York City is the best
Right.
to do it.
Right.
When he was governor, I wouldn't say he was necessarily anti New York City, but that really wasn't his focus. Oftentimes, the governor and the mayor clash, right? You would have
Right.
Cuomo and de Blasio famously clashing. He would always say, listen, nothing against New York City, but my job as governor is to look out for the whole state. And it's a big state aside from New York. And so a lot of people in New
Sure.
York City kind of looked at him like he wasn't really our champion because he was always pushing back against what the city was asking for. So to say I'm just going to run for mayor, I always took it as he's looked at this as an opening politically for him because he did resign in scandal and he sees he can win
Right.
this, kind of like a big fish in a small pond almost, even though New York City isn't really a small pond.
True.
It
True.
is in comparison to the state, I guess. So
True.
that's how I was looked at it. But now I'm looking at it like what's going on with Hochul. He could probably beat her if he just goes right for that. But
Yeah.
but then again, you also have other considerations politically, like maybe she's not the most popular now with the voters, but maybe she still will hold on to the unions and certain constituencies
Right.
Cuomo thinks he would need. So maybe he sees more of an opening here.
It could be. So
Yeah.
what is the bottom line in all of this?
Wow, that's a great question. I think we started off talking about everyone is entitled to due process. I also talked about cop outs, right? Let's not cop out. So is there a middle ground here, right? Is there a
Talking
middle
about talk about taking back your dap.
take it back your tap? Yeah. Is there a middle ground between affording everyone that due process and also coming in and putting the foot down where it's needed? Maybe taking preemptive action where it's needed, right? It's tricky because these are political considerations to make, but there are also legal considerations to make. There are also moral and ethical considerations to make. So these lines aren't always easy to walk. And you can't be everything to everyone. Maybe that's the bottom line, because it seems a little bit like in Hochul's quest to appease everyone, she might be angering everyone because she's not really giving anyone what they want. Maybe because she's being a little too cautious, right? I don't know. I'm speculating myself on this, but oftentimes that tends to happen, right? When you try to be everything to everyone, you end up being nothing to everyone, right? So maybe Ma'am Dami has it right, whether we support him or not. He's at least being unabashedly who he is. And maybe in today's climate, there is an appetite for folks who are not playing politics with everything and overthinking.
I think it's a good assessment. It's something good to question, to think about for sure. Um, so I think that was good. We're gonna land with that one.
Okay.
And people, of course, to subscribe to us on YouTube and everywhere podcasts are available, and participate in the conversation. Jump in, give your comments, give your feedback. Even if they don't make a lot of sense, come on in. Let's start the conversation. Like, we got a comment today. Someone said, end birthright citizenship. And I'm like, okay, why do you say that? Do your homework. I don't have time for this.
What?
What? Okay. You know, so it sounds like you don't know why you want to end it. But okay.
That sounds like roid rage. I don't want to say roid. Like how
It's
like
comment rage.
yeah, you're on the road and someone is just honking like road rage. I was thinking roid rage, like someone in the gym going crazy, but like that's the kind of vibe I'm getting from it. Yeah, podcast rage, comment poll rage. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. But it's all good. Hey,
Well,
keep the
listen,
comments coming.
yeah, it's all good. This is just a matter of getting a conversation started, and
Right.
we don't have the answers to everything, right? No one does, and so I think it's just a matter of talking about things, getting our ideas out there. Sometimes they may even seem to conflict or contradict, but that's okay. Like we're
Right.
trying to look at things from different sides and work our way through this as best we can.
And thus is what the meaning of nuance is.
There you go. There you go. So
All
where can
right.
people find us?
Everywhere. Everywhere podcast is available, YouTube, then social media, it was Instagram and
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
on Reddit and yeah,
all
hit
that
us
good
up.
stuff. So as
All
always,
the good.
thank you all for joining us. We've got work to do, and we will catch you next time.